The Tech It Up Talk podcast aspires to educate, inform, and inspire educators from teachers to school leaders on tips, tools, and resources to support the integration of technology into classroom instruction.
You ready? Here we go.
You're listening to Tech It Up Talk with Dr. Mac, your host with the most passion for supporting educators from teachers to school leaders with the integration of technology into instruction. We're back for another episode of Tech It Up Talk, and I'm your host, Dr. Mac, and today's episode promises to be both enlightening and timely. Our guest, Dr. Marcie Strahan, is a distinguished educator and advocate for mental health with an impressive 28 years of experience in education. Currently serving as the Executive Director of Social and Emotional Learning and Culture at Aldine ISD, Dr. Strahan is the forefront of shaping positive learning environments. In today's conversation, we're delving into a crucial topic of elevating social and emotional learning in a digital learning environment. Dr. Strahan not only designs and manages programs to promote social and emotional learning strategies, but also collaborates across departments to provide multi-tiered systems of support. Beyond her professional expertise, Dr. Strahan is the author of a self-care workbook offering invaluable insights into avoiding burnout by prioritizing self-care. Join us as we discuss the transformative impact of social and emotional learning in a digital era and how it plays a pivotal role in fostering a positive educational culture. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Marcie Strahan.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Looking forward to all the great insight that you're going to share with us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too. So thank you for inviting me so I can share just a little bit about what I love to do.
All right. Well, we're going to just jump into the interview. I know you have some great jewels to share with us. And so just for our listeners, because we have listeners across the country, outside of the country. And so we wanted first to start with defining what does social and emotional learning, SEL, what does it entail? And why is it considered a crucial component in our educational arena?
Okay. So I'll start off with the typical definition that we do provide when anyone asks that question. So SEL is a process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge and skills and attitudes to develop healthy identities. They learn to manage their emotions, achieve their personal and collective goals. But then that too is you actually teach students or adults how to set those goals. And then another piece of it is to feel and show empathy for others, just being able to put themselves in someone else's shoes, um, just within that just daily walk that they're doing. Establish and maintain supportive relationships. And then the key part is to make responsible and caring decisions with all that information that they've collected.
All right. So what specific social and emotional skills does SEL aim to develop in students? And how do these skills contribute to their overall academic success and well-being?
So our 5 castle competencies, the ones that we focus on the most, are self-awareness, self-management, the social awareness piece, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. I always tease people and say that I live in the land of self-awareness because I just catch myself from time to time, or I manage my emotions as well. Like if I see myself getting upset, anxious, overwhelmed, then there are just little things that I've learned to do within this work, which is what we're also teaching students and adults to do too, just to make them more comfortable just within themselves. It's nothing wrong when you have to take a deep breath, use some mindfulness. Those are just those coping skills, those good skills that are going to help you just in every walk of your life. And so when we're using these competencies, when you get better at them, because it is a process, so it's not, no one is perfect. No one is just born with, magical SEL skills. It's an ongoing thing all the time. But what we're seeing is improved academic performance. We also see the development of positive relationships between students and other students. It could be teachers and students. It could be teachers with other staff members. We also see reduced behavior problems because we're teaching students how to be aware of their own emotions and then to be able to manage those emotions. You're also working with that conflict resolution. So those good skills, so you don't have as many behavior problems as you would without a good foundation in SEL. There's also increased resilience and then overall just better mental health.
I love it. Better mental health. Yes. And so incorporating SEL into an instructional technology space or digital learning space probably requires some thoughtful approach. As we know that a lot of our students are in this digital learning landscape that we have. Can you share some examples of specific tools or maybe just some strategies that can effectively foster social and emotional skills in students while kind of leveraging and utilizing technology?
Absolutely. First, I'll say integration is the key. Um, Oftentimes we think of SEL as a standalone something, or we're gonna allot a specific amount of time to promote SEL. But what we need to do is just incorporate SEL in our daily walk and just everyday good instruction. And so some ways that you can do that, especially incorporating technology, I have a couple of different examples. So one could be working with students or staff. I always include adults, so you'll hear me say students and staff, because you can't just SEL the students. You got to have
Right.
SEL for adults as well. So forgive me as I go through that. But starting off with maybe guided mindfulness and meditation, we just have to learn to be comfortable in just the pause. Like, you just really have to pause. So some exercises that you could use from some of the different apps would be Headspace or even Calm. So those are just apps that are dedicated to mindfulness. And I'll give you an example. Like, you see it on the news. If you do watch the news, they've incorporated it just that between segments. There'll be the rocks or the water, and it's just a moment to just pause and center yourself. So if we're talking about integration and incorporating it into our everyday instruction, another thing is to use your slides. Most of us are using Google Slides or PowerPoint, or we're even designing things in Canva. So as you're putting your lessons together, you could do check-ins and just incorporate that in the slide. So if you're getting ready to talk about weather, the lesson is going to be about weather that day, then you could do a check-in with the students. If you had to describe yourself in weather, what would the weather be? And then have the different icons for cloud, sunshine, partly cloudy, and get into a discussion. You're incorporating it in to what you're already going to talk about. I really like Google Forms as well, because you could do a check-in with students or staff, or if someone is needing to talk to you but they don't want to say it out loud, that hey, something is really bothering me and I need to discuss it with someone. So you could use a Google form and just monitor that. um, it's several different things. You also want to use technology to encourage connections. So whether that's an online discussion through Padlet, where you get to see, someone else has the same idea, or they were thinking the same way I was, and then giving them an opportunity to comment on one another's platforms is good as well. And so those are just a couple of little things before you even get into a specific curriculum for SEL. And we do definitely have those now that are online platforms that you could use. So those examples would be Second Step, Quaver, Seven Mindsets, or even Rethink Houston. And so with those, there's a evidence-based curriculum that they're using to teach the SEL skills through interactive lessons, videos, and other activities. So those are
All
just,
right.
I know that was a lot. I'm
That was a
sorry.
lot. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think we try to overcomplicate like how to connect the technology piece in. And sometimes it's just really being strategic and intentional with your practice. So I like like you said, a lot of our teachers are already using
Mhm.
slides in some capacity, whether they're just presenting to the student or not. And we have campuses or that may be using Nearpod or using Pear Deck that can help with facilitating instruction, so they can add some of that interactivity to do just what you were saying. And so like even with Pear Deck, like the first thing that it has is like, how are you doing today? So they can do like a check-in, but like just
Right,
to be intentional to incorporate those pieces along with the content and the instruction. And I love the point about creating a system for students to really check in and
right,
creating a safe space. And so I think a teacher will have to probably be strategic with that and say, well, here's a form that you can
right.
just fill out. But like you want to make that a part of your system and invite them and encourage them to do that. So those are, I think, are great practices to kind of help support a safe space for students to kind of share and feel comfortable with connecting with you. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And that piece too, when we're talking about SEL, it is how you're setting up your classroom, because in your classroom, you're setting up a safe community. So you're setting it up, you're building the students' confidence to where they can share, sometimes they can share some things with amongst their peers, But it's not even about that as much as it is they're comfortable with sharing with you because you are building that relationship with them. So they know they're coming to school every single day to an adult's classroom who truly does care about their best interest. They want to know, what did they do last night? They want to know how they feel about certain situations. And then they just want to know that you're human. We don't have good days all the days, all
Right.
days. So sometimes they need to hear what our struggle is and how, we're bringing our best stuff forward for that day of instruction. So they can do the same thing.
All right. Well, in the context of personalized learning experiences, how can technology kind of be tailored to address the diverse social and emotional needs of our students and taking into account like factors like different learning styles and cultural backgrounds?
So first thing is you've got to tap into the varied learning style. So just like back in the day, with our original pedagogy, we talked about students who are visual learners or tactile learners. They learn auditory learners. So that's the first thing. Just thinking about the different modalities. But then, as we're talking about integrating technology and things of that nature, you want to make sure you're creating an inclusive, engaging, and culturally responsive environment. So you have to consider adaptive learning platforms that can adjust to the difficulty level, pace, and content of lessons based on the students' responses. You want to make sure you're accommodating their different learning styles and abilities. Also, delivering content in various formats. So it may be text, it may be audio, it may be video, or then even some interactive simulations that you could find. And then another thing too is using culturally responsive resources that incorporate relevant content, but then also perspectives of everyone that's in the group. So that's the part about being inclusive. We don't want to leave any group of students out of of a discussion. So even looking at your photos and things of that nature, you want to make sure you're covering everyone's backgrounds. When you're able to do that, you're creating a collaborative learning platform that enables students to work together on those projects. They are able to have those discussions and problem skills. And this is also promoting peer interaction as well as social skills and development is more encouraged.
All right. Yes, I love that. Now, as the executive director of social and emotional learning and culture,
Mhm.
you play a key role in promoting SEL strategy. So, how do you design and implement programs to kind of ensure that SEL is effectively integrated into curriculum and the broader school culture in general?
So first I'll say it is an ongoing process. Um, I think someone once asked me something similar and just kind of how we do the things that we do. And so the two words that I say are patience and
Mhm.
persistence. And what I mean by that is you have to be patient because not everybody is sold, if you will, on SEO.
Right.
It doesn't show up in your accountability rating or things of that nature. So it does typically end up uh, being one of those things that gets pushed to the side, and rightfully so, because you're gonna focus on those things that are gonna show up, right? Um, but you're gonna have to be patient because again, everybody is not at that place where you are, but then persistent. So when someone is ready, then they could grab hold of it. There are a couple of principles that I can think of as key examples that if you were to talk to them about SEL 2, 3, 5 years ago, they'd say that you're crazy. I don't have time for that. You just got to come and do your job. But I've seen so much growth in them personally, in their staff, their relationships with their students and staff, because they found little bitty pieces that they could hold on to, and it's making a great difference. So I want to come back to the question. I don't know why I just went there.
Oh no, I think you've answered the question. And so,
Right.
do you think like COVID like had like a impact on opinions about SEL? I'm just wondering.
I think so because with that isolation, you were in a moment of self reflection, self awareness, like you were practically going through that process on your own. So for me, just personally, like it could have been easy to like fall victim to your thoughts, if that makes
Right.
sense. Right. I'm not trying to go too deep, but you couldn't go out. Like it's not a situation where you didn't want to go out. You couldn't, even if you wanted to. There was nowhere that you could go. And then of course, you start feeling like the walls are closing in on you. So I know what I was doing was finding different things that I could do outside, like in the backyard or, walk around the neighborhood. But then it was still scary because, you didn't know what was out there and how it would impact you if you were to get COVID or something like that. So it was a very, scary. If thinking about it now, it's a very scary time. Very scary.
Yeah, I feel like I felt like I heard more about SEL afterwards. I don't know if it was like more schools and districts were being more intentional with wanting to do it, as before it was like those extra activities that you had to do, and it was like a mandate during this certain period of the day, whether it was homeroom or intervention period or whatever. Schools have those little passing times where they're able to kind of anchor in like advisory period and things like that. They were just like check off things, they weren't like intentionally done with the passion behind it. And so I felt like as time kind of changed, and we went to that, which we're about to get to our next question, is like your book, we're talking about self-care, addresses burnout and prioritizing self-care, and is really focused for educators. So, I think us personally going through those things had a really play on how we then looked at it to now say, hey, we need to do something different. But there's still growth to go, of course. It's always growth between organizations. So,
I
but
I had the pleasure of serving as a principal during that time, and we went off. It's really crazy. You went off for spring break and you didn't come back, or you didn't know when you were going to come back. It was like, okay, maybe a couple of days. Oh, it's a little bit longer. Oh no, it's another week. Oh, are we going to go back? Well, now we're preparing a month later. Um, so when we brought started bringing the staff back, that was one process to go through just to make sure the adults were being comfortable, because
right,
your level of comfort with COVID was different. Like you had some people that didn't mind touching, you had some that were like, stay away. And that's just the adults, right? So we got them back in the building. Then it's okay, now it's time for students to come back. But we're still dealing with adults that aren't comfortable with being back. Now we have students who haven't necessarily been taught the skills of how to handle and have those coping skills, but now they're back on the campus at the same time. So it was a lot of navigating. And I think that's where my true passion for self-care came about, because it was, I need to do what I need to do to make sure I'm okay. Because when I get to school or get to the campus, I need to be able to take care of my students and staff. So how am
right,
I going to show up as the best version of myself? And it
right.
just it just ended up pouring out into a workbook to try to help others.
Okay. Well, of course, like your self care workbook, it addresses the burnout and really prioritizing that self care. So, how do you see educators, teachers, leaders kind of balancing the demands of the digital learning environment while still kind of taking care of their own well being? And what role does SEL play in supporting educators in this regard?
Um, I think that self-awareness piece, again, I told you earlier, I live in Atlanta, self-awareness. I think that plays a big role in it, because our skill level with technology and comfort with technology was all over the place. Like, I'm not a techie, but I'm a techie, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know the formal words and phrases and codes and things like that, but if you put me in front of a computer long enough, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to design something, I'm going to create something, I'm going to put up a website. That's me. But I think of my mom, for example, that like she's not on Facebook, because when people start sending her friend requests, she doesn't know what to do. That scares her. So now you have these same people that are teaching and being forced to teach using computers, but they may not have been comfortable other than just submitting their lesson plans. But now they're having to do a whole, like, truly lesson, engage students, keep them abreast of what you need them to be, and then move them forward. Um, that's a lot. That's really, when you really think about where we were. And again, it's very level. Some were very comfortable with it, but then you have others that were like, "No, I'm going to retire. I'm going to quit. This is it. I can't do it. If this is education in 2020 plus plus plus, then I can't do it."
Yeah, I definitely have seen quite a few who felt that way. And you know what? And it's okay because like we are here to serve kids and we don't want to do a disservice to them. And so if you're not ready, it's not Like I firmly believe if you're not ready to always adapt and do what's best for kids, then it might be your time for your sunset and and for your sunset in your educational career. You had a
Right.
great sunrise, but make sure that we're ready to let that go and let the next person come in and do what's best for kids. And so,
Mhm.
awesome. Yes. So let's move on to the next segment of our show, which I like to call Get Your Tech Together. And here's where I just want you to specifically share maybe some tools or resources that you feel educators should have in their toolbox to help them with supporting SEL.
Okay. So I mentioned it a little bit before. So those are those apps for meditation or guided mindfulness. So that would be something like Headspace or Calm. All of the Google platform, you can use Google, the slides, the documents, spreadsheets, all of those things. One that I didn't mention was Google Keep for digital journaling. So you may have just an opportunity for students to just write how they feel, or you may even have a prompt and they can keep track of that in Google Keep. Another thing for technology is to gamify learning if you can, because that does build the community and you have students that are rooting each other on. And then they're also kind of dealing with losing, right? So that could be Kahoot or any interactive Quizlet or things like that. That would be good. And then I'll tell you my last one is always a good playlist because I'm a type person that music I just work to music and I have different playlists for different moods. So if I just need a background noise, it may be one type of playlist, or if I need to wiggle a little bit, then I'll switch it up. So music would be good too to help reinforce SEL in the classroom.
Yeah, I think music is probably one of my favorite ones to consider because even like when I train and develop even teachers, like I always try to incorporate music. It does something to your soul. It loosens up some of like, for example, especially in professional development, with people you don't know the audience and you're new to it and they're new to you. And it's quiet in the room and you want to break up the silence and some of them may have been voluntold to be here and they don't want to really be there. And so usually that music really like with the kids, it connects with people
Absolutely.
and having different things. So it's like one of my personal passions, of course, is getting students involved and interested in STEM. And so I do coding for the culture, which really connects getting students interested in computer science, but through music and not just through any music, through the music they listen to every day. And so just to draw that in to bring that connection of interest into an area that especially underrepresented youth in the STEM area. So that build that connection like, man, you can
Yeah.
do that. And they get really excited about it. Or I think elementary teachers have done this really well. I love going to elementary campuses because they have some awesome things happening that you don't see at secondary. But like I'll see that they'll have like different sounds that will like change the tone of the room. So maybe
Mhm.
they have the fairy and it's your transition music and they'll use that for helping with managing instructional time or certain sounds meant certain things to happen or kind of uplift the mood or like
Right.
a brain break or things like that. And so, yeah, I definitely love music for our students and I love it for our adults just as well. So I think it really connects with us and kind of getting us into like, I think sometimes as leaders, we are very formal sometimes and we want
Right.
people to respect us. And so just letting that guard down a little bit to really connect and really make that impact that you really want to do. I think music helps allow for some of that to happen. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Because I even think about just growing up and the music that you listen to on Saturday. It's like your Saturday cleanup music. So even if that were to come out at a PD session or whatever, and then you just start looking around, and because the song is going to touch you for different reasons, then you start looking around like, oh, you know that song? You used to sing that song? Yeah. It's all about that connection. And then that is really what SEL is about. It's building those relationships, it's those connections, it's just being able to put yourselves in other people's shoes and their era, and that's what it is.
Yeah, I've seen teachers also like allow students to create the playlist, appropriate playlist, of course. And then
Yeah.
they'll have like a playlist of vibes that if they were doing like independent practice or and I think I used to do that myself too when I was in the classroom.
Mhm.
Like just let them pick what would be there. Of course, we had to monitor what the picks were, but
Of course, but that's the one that's on the very end of the playlist that you never get to.
right. I think we had like at this time, it's like everyone had their headphones in, trying to make sure that they were attentive to the work. It's like early, technology integration pieces of my career where you're still learning kind of how to manage a digital classroom. And so students would like veer off and spend too much time trying to find the next song,
Right.
then pay attention to the work. And so it was just another way to get their interest in and kind of hear their interest and incorporate it into an element that wasn't really directly connected to the work, but connected, I guess, emotionally to them working and feeling an enjoyable vibe from me who taught chemistry.
Right.
Like, who wants to learn chemistry? But yeah, so yeah, thank you. I love it. And
Hmm.
so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up our conversation. And
Okay.
so before we go, if you can just give your three best tips about for your our listeners to take away with it could be anything tech or just standard SEL best practices, that'll be great.
Hmm. So first thing is, again, do not think of SEL as another thing that you have to do or something in addition to. Truly integrate that to your everyday teaching, working, whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be something formal. It's just about connecting with your audience, connecting with your students, your staff, whoever. So that would be the first thing. Two, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and try a new tech tool. We mentioned quite a few today. So just throw it out there, give it a try. If that one doesn't work, which is the same thing about the self-care workbook and why I have so many different examples. If that one piece doesn't work for you, then try something different, but don't ever give up. Like, don't stop. Um, and then a third tip. Just remember, it's not perfect. SEL is still a process. It's not only through high school you have to do. We are all learning something different about ourselves. We're learning more about what our needs are. We start over every year with new goals, and we start over with a new planner or you're picking up on a new strategy to even try to keep those goals. It's all part of the process. So don't, just it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to just relax, let it be, breathe because you're going to get anxious, excited or whatever the feelings may be, but just respect that pause.
Oh, I love that. Respect that pause.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before you go, if you could just share with our listeners how they can connect with you and be a part of your learning network.
So my website is www.marciestrahan.com. Real easy, Marcie IE. Um And I am building my mailing list so we can connect that way and I can send you some workbooks. I do a self care Saturday post on all my social media platforms every week. So just to give you something to think about, it varies. It may be a little education, it may be a reminder, it may be a journal prompt or a question, maybe a task or a challenge for you to go out and do with other people. But I just like to take a moment on Saturdays to just think of what we can do for ourselves.
All right. I love it. So thank you again.
Mhm.
And that's a wrap for another enlightening episode of Tech It Up Talk. A big thank you to our incredible guest, Dr. Marcie Strahan, for sharing her invaluable insights on social emotional learning with the twist of a digital learning landscape. And so I hope you, our fantastic listeners, have gained fresh perspectives and actionable ideas to enhance your instructional practices. But before we go, remember to connect with us, stay updated on all things Tech It Up Talk. Follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Tech It Up Talk. Whether it's X, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your ideas, and suggestions for future episodes. Also, be sure to get a copy of my book, Get Your Tech Together, available for you on Amazon. And so, I know tech it may not always be easy, but it sure is fun.